I've gone deep into neuroscience. And now I'm seeing so much, say, leadership 101 stuff that just doesn't work with what we know about neuroscience. So part of my passion comes from how do we get the right information out there? How do I break down really difficult concepts into easy stuff to understand so that the people that I love working with, the people that are the backbone of industry, can excel and have the lifestyle and the living they want? That's what drives me.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I am your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a great one. Our guest is a speaker, author, and founder of the Accountants Millionaires Club that helps accountants, lawyers, and consultants make partner. Heather Townsend, welcome to the show.
Hello, Michael. Thank you so much for asking me.
Yeah, it's been great to get to meet you at QuickBooks Connect San Jose, get to see some of the work that you're doing, and also it was pretty fun to be on the Cloud Accounting podcast with you where we actually met. So thank you for coming on our podcast.
It's always a pleasure. We had a great conversation where we put the world to rights for pricing, didn't we?
You got it. You got it. Now, for the rest of our listener that may not know you, please tell us a little bit about yourself, your career journey leading up to this point.
Yeah, I guess I've had one of those career journeys that's changed. So I originally have an engineering degree from Oxford University. So I think most of our listeners have probably heard of that university. That's in the UK, probably one of the most respected institutions around the world for education. I realised I didn't want to be an engineer. I've realised that my ability not to be able to tell my left and right is actually a dyslexic trait. It's just not that I'm incompetent. So I went into the world of supply chain management, moved into learning and development there, and then moved across out of that sector into working for BDO, who in the UK were, when I joined them, the top 5 UK accountancy practice. And I know they have a presence in North America, Canada, USA, and all around the world. And when I was there, I became intrinsically interested in exactly what does it take to move your career onto partner. I used to see really talented people not make it and see what I would say well, you're a bit flaky, make it. And actually, if I'm honest, part of my life's work has come, well, what helps people be successful? How do you move your career on around here? And part of the work I was doing was consulting with the owners of the business unit and helping them think through their growth plans, helping them think through what do we need our people to do to achieve our growth plans, where are the issues with our growth plans. So when the global recession, when Lehman Brothers went down, hit the UK, which really started to bite sort of 2008, beginning of 2009, BDO, I got made redundant, let go. And at the time, I had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. So it was like, well, what do I do? Well, let's do what I did, but just for people that pay me directly instead of being employed. And then over the last 10 years, that led to me writing the book. The Financial Times asking me to write the book for their publishing arm, the Financial Times Guide to Business Networking, which then led to me writing the book, which is now in its 3rd edition, How to Make Partners Still Have a Life, which then led to me writing The Go-To Expert, which then led to me really in the last couple of years getting really, really serious about helping small accountants grow their practice, which led to the Accountants Millionaires Club and book. It's led to the Profitable Pricing for Accountants book. And now I spend half my time working with my team of growth specialists, helping small accountancy firm owners all around the world actually grow a profitable and sustainable practice.
Wow. It's an incredible journey, and just in your authoring journey it's like just a complete rally of books that you've written, and to be able to put all of that into all of your knowledge, all of your experiences into books is remarkable. So congratulations on all of those elements. And so what I knew right away was you have a wealth of information I think our listener will love to learn about and start to understand how they can do better inside of their business. Where does the passion come from? Like, to write a book, one book is a big deal. To write all the books that you've done, you must be passionate about this work. Where do you think that stems from?
I think I have a lot of frustration that we're in a rapidly changing world. We're in an environment where change is just getting faster and faster. And actually, the competitive advantage is about how people adapt, how people change, how people embrace new technologies. So we've got that background. Bear in mind, I've been writing books now. When you did what were you doing 10 years ago? I hadn't published any books. I hadn't even been commissioned for my first book. I was just about to, but I hadn't actually done any of that. So why in 10 years? Well, we've really seen social media completely change the political, the economic landscape about how people do and what they do. But what really frustrates me is the information that I get seeing coming out in professional services is stuff that's 20, 30 years old and often is out of date. And that really frustrates me. It frustrates me that people that I know are great people, like accountants, like bookkeepers, they're the salt of the earth. They're the people that always want to do the right time, are being misled by charlatans is a strong word, sometimes charlatans, or people just peddling old stuff that is so out of date, it's now dangerous. And a lot of my passion comes from going, right, what is the best way for this? What is the right way of doing that? So at the moment, I've realized, and I know it sounds really strange, but everything I do about helping people grow their practice, whether in a big four or a small accountancy firm, is all about the individual journey of personal change. How do you get an individual to change their behaviors, to change their habits, to change what they do? And as a result, I love learning, and that's part of the passion. I've gone deep into neuroscience, and now I'm seeing so much, say, leadership 101 stuff that just doesn't work with what we know about neuroscience. So part of my passion comes from, how do we get the right information out there? How do I break down really difficult concepts into easy stuff to understand, so that the people that I love working with, the people that are the backbone of industry, can excel and have the lifestyle and the living they want? That's what drives me.
I love it, and it's definitely what we're passionate about here too, because it's the bookkeepers that are listening right now. They are the salt of the earth, and the work that they do is so critical and important. And one of my frustrations in the industry is this talk about people becoming redundant, and that automation is going to remove the whole industry away. And that would be really, I think, a disservice to small business owners out there that desperately need someone to help them be the shepherd of their finances and their business and the economic strength of their business. So it's a shame for the listener to be struggling in their business. And it's even worse of a shame, because if they're struggling, they can't be out there helping small business be more successful in our communities. And we're done if we can't do that. I mean, yes, there's lots of great technology out there that's helping, but it's also higher regulation, increased technology. And within all of that technology is complication for small business owners. So, such a huge opportunity, and I'm sure you see it as well, such a huge opportunity in the marketplace if you've got the right mindset and if you're willing to do things that are new and make changes so that you are able to be successful. I got a question for you. When you've talked about this journey and seeing people when you were working with BDO and seeing people and the mistakes that they were making that would prevent them from making partner or being successful in their business? What were some of those key things that they were doing?
So it all really comes down to mindset. Fundamentally, your mindset drives what you focus on. What you focus on drives your activities and behaviors, which then drive your outcomes. Now, fundamentally, part of the issue we've got is that when you progress your career, what you're there to do changes. So at one point when you were a junior, it was all about how do I get allocated on jobs? And so therefore you got your value, you got your personal value, you got your appreciation from your billable time target. So the more I can beat my billable target, the more valuable I am, therefore whatever. Now that doesn't work when you get to the senior levels of the firm, because actually you're not there to do the work, you've got other responsibilities. And this isn't just in like the senior levels of, say, BDO. You see this in bookkeeping firms, where you've got the bookkeeper that needs to move away from being the firm to the person that runs the firm. But because their value has come from being the person doing the work, seeing their billable time, being able to put the invoice out from what they've done, and I do it myself, and it's really bad. You've got to get out of the habit of going, right, I did 6 hours work for a client. That means that I billed this amount. Okay, we're going to be fine for this month. And I see this problem of it. How to change that mindset to move your role to where you need to get to. And it's the same whether you're a BDO or you're a single bookkeeper trying to kind of get to the point where you've got your practice working the way you want it to. It's the age-old Marshall Goldsmith saying of what got you there is not going to get you here type stuff. And that's the biggest mistake I see. And if I elaborate a bit more, why is that mindset an issue? Well, and I know, Michael, that when you've got a good bookkeeper, it's not about winning work they have a problem with. It's actually about they have too much work. So as a result, they don't pay attention to everything they need to be doing in their firm. So something happens, which means everything goes wrong or there's a dilemma and that's a crisis because they've been doing too much work. And I think one of the big difficulties people have is when you're one person, 3 people, 5 people in your bookkeeping firm is what is the right balance of your responsibilities? How much should you be doing business development? How much should you be doing client work, account management? And a problem we've got is you might get sucked into doing the day-to-day, so you don't have the long-term conversations with the client. So you miss the opportunity to pick up cash flow reporting. So the work goes elsewhere and the basic bookkeeping goes elsewhere. If you'd spent the time on the account management, it happened, but you got too sucked into the day job. It's the getting sucked into the day job, say, I know the US has got big peaks, the UK has got big peaks, not necessarily for bookkeepers, but you get sucked in the big peaks, so you stop doing the business development, the account manager, and then you get feast and famine. And then it's painful because you don't have enough work, so you're working really hard to find the work, and then you get the work in, and then you've got too much work, and the cycle repeats itself. So does that give you some of my thinking about where I've seen some of those big mistakes, regardless of what size of firm, when people are trying to move their firm on wherever they are in that firm?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Mindset is the big one. And yet it's a very elusive and challenging problem to solve for our listener, because how do they know that their mindset is not at the right spot, right, to change? And we talked about this a little bit in our call, in our conversation before this interview. Is person, the way that they are today is the way it's a accumulation of thoughts, ideas, experiences, and all this good stuff, and a view of the world, and that's the view. And it's like, what's that interruption that has them go, oh, you know what? There's a better way. There's a way to get somewhere that's better. Number one is like seeing something new, but then also being able to create new pathways, new patterns, new ways of thinking that enable you to take on that new or have that new outcome. And so it's a challenge.
Yeah. Classic example today. So I was with a client And the previous conversation, we'd been talking about how much she could charge for running a payroll. So a job that most bookkeepers will probably do at some point, run a payroll. And she ummed and ahed about it, and we compromised that she was going to go in at £97. And then when I spoke to her this week, she said, I actually went in at £125. And I said, what made the difference? Because suddenly in that conversation, she was saying, yeah, I priced higher than I spoke to you I would. I said, what made the difference? Why this change? What's happened? It wasn't that she had too much work, because she'd let one of her big clients go because, and I know most bookkeepers have this, they have this big client who is a lot of their monthly fee, but it's far too many hours. And actually their fee should be hiked up significantly. It was one of those ones. She'd let one of those ones go. So she had a massive hold. So by all intents and purposes, she didn't, she needed this work. And she said, oh, well, actually, it's because my daughter's getting married. I'm like, what's that got to do with it? She goes, and actually we spoke to a local band to come and play. And the amount they charged me, I was just like, wow. And I'm like, and she goes, it just clicked. They know their value. And I need to know my value. And I think with bookkeepers, a lot of them don't know their value. And so when you say to them, look, you should be charging a retainer plus then an amount per transaction, they're like, can I do that? Surely I should be charging per hour because that shows my true value. We won't get into that conversation again, Michael, but it is about mindset, valuing yourself, mindset change about what are you really there to do to help you and your firm be successful. And that's what a lot of people struggle with because they fall back into old behaviors, old ways of working. And that's where the likes of what you do with your license, the likes of what we do with Campus Millionaires Club, and it's that peer support and that accountability that can help drive in and generate the right mindset.
I love it, and I think for anyone that has, it's to trust their intuition. Because it's if we asked people that were part of your Accountants Millionaire Club or the people who are part of Pure Bookkeeping, after they've gone in and invested all of the time and energy and made the change, the learnings that they get along the way, it's if you went and said, well, what was it that made the difference? It's that they took an action on some form of intuition, saying, do something different. It's time. There's something to do, and then something begins. And so a way to open those things up to even be in that spot of thinking is to do something different than what you've been doing every day, and that might be buying a book on a book or listening to a podcast. Even this podcast perhaps could be that interruption that creates a new pathway for our listener, which goes, the way I'm thinking about this, there might be something different. Have there been moments in your life or books that you've read or people that you've listened to that have helped you open up your mind to something new and to create some new transformation in your life?
Oh, yeah, tons. So, it's happening all the time. But let me just pick some of the big ones. So I love reading around behavioral economics. So I started reading around Daniel Kaufman, Thinking Fast and Slow. And actually, his model is a great sort of shorthand that works, not debunked theory like the Tribune theory of how the brain works. Great shorthand for really demystifying how some of the brain works. And actually, a lot of our book, Profitable Pricing, has a lot of the thinking from that has been heavily influenced by Daniel's work on System 1, System 2 thinking and how the brain wants to automatically move to patterns of work. That led to me reading around a lot of the work around behavioral economics. And I then combined that with, I did 6 months learning from somebody with a PhD, an expert in neuroscience. And I then added her work to the work of behavioral economics and looked at it through the lens of pricing to really understand how do you win the battle of your mind around pricing, because that's the big bit around mindset that's missing. They've been heavily influenced by the work of James Clear, who wrote Atomic Habits, because I was trying to understand, why do some people have a goal succeed and other people have a goal that don't succeed? And he explained it very well, is that goals are really only good for short-term accountability and performance. 90 days, there's a reason why the software industry loves its 90-day sprints. And you don't hear about a year sprint because it's too long a time span. And actually, the difference is about you rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And actually, a lot of the work I do now personally and with people is helping them create the right habits. Because the basis is we're looking for sustained high performance. We're not actually looking for one-off, I've hit the target, oh, now I want to stop. You think about anybody that's run a marathon, that's done any sort of endurance feat, that's lost weight. Very often they get to that point and then 6 months later, they've never run again. They've never walked another step. All the weight's going back on again. And actually, if we're going to deliver sustained high levels of performance to grow our practice, bookkeeping or otherwise, we've got to have sustainable performance. That means it's about the habits, it's about our personal systems. And that really, really kind of made me sit up and think and rethink. And now a lot of my work is kind of going, look, forget traditional leadership theory. This doesn't work. It's actually, of course, it does work, but it's the really hard way. Would you like an easy way? And this is where you bring in the habit change. A book that scared me, really, really scared me, but scared me to take action is a book by, I think it's Matthew Walters, Why We Sleep, and explained really, really in depth why we sleep, how sleep helps us, why most of our problems with our healthcare comes back down to the fact that we as a definitely in the Western world are sleep deprived, because we have this always on machismo culture that says, oh no, we have to be part of the 5 a.m. club and still working hard at 10 p.m. No, and I found that really interesting. I then kind of started adding to that, and I've been reading a lot of the work by Dave Asprey around his game changers and his biohacking work. And it was one of his experts put it really neatly, is that actually to deliver high performance, in order to do that, we need to put our self-care first. We need to prioritize our self-care. What do we do in the world of work is actually we deprioritize self-care for work. In fact, it's often second or third on our agenda. Because when we start to get overwhelmed, when we start to get under pressure, what happens is our personal admin goes first, and then the second thing that goes is our self-care. And you're like, but that's so right, isn't it? That needs to go in the diary first. And it was one of those moments where you're like, right, if I'm going to help people build a firm foundation, actually, we've got to make sure the individual is prioritizing their self-care. Otherwise, we're just going to be working harder. I could go on and on and on about some of the books that have made a real difference to me, but I hope that's given you a flavor, Michael, of some of the recent ones over the last 2-3 years that have really kind of gone, oh, that's what it's about.
I love it. There's a few books, Atomic Habits, Think Fast, Think Slow, I think is what, these are books that they're on the shelf, not read yet. And so it's inspiring me to read those two books, because they're the Atomic Habits. I know Debbie Roberts, the co-founder of Pure Bookkeeping and author of E-Myth. Yeah. Atomic Habits is one of her favorites. She absolutely loves it, talks about it all the time. So, it's one of those books keep coming back up that I need to read. And I think the big message there is that it's whatever our listeners is, if there's something, it's one thing, do something that's going to interrupt the way your life is today, because it does take an interruption to have change happen. And so whether it's listening to some of the books that you or listening, I like to listen to books, but reading or listening to the books, podcasts, something that will have you start thinking differently and give you the tools to create a life that you desire.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm now thinking about some more of the books. So I quite like some of the Rockefeller Habits work. And actually that heavily influenced a lot of our methodology on how do you grow an accountancy firm. Things like the One Big Focus came from the likes of the software world that use their 90-day sprints or their 1-month sprints. And we have this concept that says, like, your one big focus for the next 90 days is the biggest thing that you need to do to move your firm forward. We apply that also in a career context. Your one big focus is what's the big thing you need to do in the next 90 days to move your career forward. And then we break that up into achievable, monthly goals, sub-monthly goals. What are you going to do, today? What's the one thing you're going to do today to make this stuff happen? And actually, a lot of what we're doing is how do you simplify stuff? And this comes back to that conversation that we're having right at the beginning. My superpower, if you want to call it, is being able to take a lot of complex stuff out there and put it together and really simplify it and make it really accessible. So I was the first person that really said, hang on a minute, it's not about online networking. It's not about offline networking. It's about what's your networking strategy and then what are the right tools in order to deliver that. And, the Financial Times Guide to Business Networking was an instant bestseller, which is quite unusual for a Financial Times Guide. They're plodders, because I was the first person who was able in the UK to kind of go, this new thing called social media, how do you use it to win business? And that's what drives me. I have a discipline that I do every year. And I discovered it from Chris Brogan. I don't know where he got it from, where every year you pick 3 words to guide you to form the basis of your year. And for me, it's a great exercise in reflection. It's a great exercise in what I want. And one of my words is simple. And that's been one of my words for the last few years at least. And it's all about, for me, is how do you make the complex simple? When you come down to personal habits, what are the very few simple habits that you need that drive a chain reaction that means that you get everything that you need done? And so let me give you a classic example. Is I have a very restricted diet, and I know it really matters what I eat. And so I've set myself an intention that every week I'll pick a recipe out of the Mindful Chef recipe book. And so this is forcing me to do a couple of things. One, it's forcing me to recipe plan throughout the week, which means that I don't get the kids coming to me saying, Mommy, what are we having? And they end up having jacket potatoes for 4 days in the week. It means I can make sure that they know what we're eating in the week. And I don't get them coming in from school going, Mommy, what are we having? And I'm like, it's on the board. I've actually texted them. It also means that I can cut down on food waste because the meals are planned, which means I can then plan the fruit and vegetable delivery and the grocery online delivery that we get here in the UK, which also means then that I'm eating high quality stuff that really works for me, helps me be at my best. And can you see that this one small habit of just picking one recipe that I want out of this recipe book each week, can you see how that chain reaction is helping me live a better way of life for me to be at my best?
Absolutely. It's remarkable. You have written many books, and you've mentioned quite a few of them here. I'm wondering what our listeners are bookkeeping business owners, and what would be your recommended book for them to start with?
It all depends on what their challenges are. So if they're sitting there and actually I just need to get new clients, I'd get them to read The Go-To Expert or the Financial Times Guide to Business Networking. The information is still sound in those books, because actually if they don't want to grow their business much beyond them, that's great. That's fine. I think what's important that you know what you want. And for them, I'd say start with, it's all about lead generation. So start with The Go-To Expert. Start with the Financial Times Guide to Business Networking. I'd also say, regardless of your aspirations for your business, read Profitable Pricing for Accountants, because exactly the same challenges are there for whether you badge yourself as a bookkeeper or an accountant. Now, if you've got aspirations to grow, if you've got aspirations to build something that's bigger than you, then I'd say start with the Accountants Millionaires Club. It is the book that kind of brings everything together in one place. And I'd say if you want to grow, don't go to the FT Guide to Business Networking. Go and read the Accountants Millionaires Club first, because it brings in the stuff from the Go-To Expert. It brings in the stuff from the FT Guide to Business Networking. And then I'd say once you've read that book, go and read Profitable Pricing for Accountants.
Beautiful. I think that's a great little roadmap for, what is the focus. There's some great suggestions. I mean, I love the three words. Actually, as you were telling that story, I thought, I've been doing a lot of thinking about the year, and I thought I pulled out 3 words very quickly. So I love that. It kind of brings it around. It's memorable. So great. And then out of that, what's your big focus? That you've got 3 great books that you've recommended to start with, and then a whole host of books to be recommended that are, I mean, there's a whole year of reading and listening, I think, just out of this one podcast. What I really believe is with something like pricing is when you're doing it, it's like reading as much as you can, consuming as much as you can while you're implementing and taking that sprint, because it shapes the thinking. So your book it's a must read. Read that book. Read Ron Baker's book. Read Mark Wickersham. Read all of these different books to shape ideas and bring that together. I mean, you've explained, that's really what you've done in your books, is taken all of these ideas and then made something that's going to work for you. And sure as heck, it's worked for many people. It's why it's become a best-selling book. So I encourage everyone to do that. And if that's one of the areas that you're focused on, do a deep dive into it and get these ideas rolling. Heather, this has been absolutely a fantastic conversation. I knew right away we'd have no problem filling up an episode. I think we're going to need to have you come back and do another episode and share more of what you've been doing over this year in 2020. And so is there anything else that you'd like to point out to our listener for them to take advantage of some of the things that you've been speaking about today?
I think really, if they've enjoyed what I've been speaking about, if they want to grow it beyond their just being themselves in their bookkeeping practice, do get a copy. You can get it on Kindle, get it on Amazon of the Accountants Millionaires Club book. Do look that up. If otherwise, look up some of my other books. If growth's not on your agenda, look at things like Profitable Pricing for Accountants. We had to rename our Pricing with Confidence book. We inadvertently trod on a trademark of an American consultant. We're like, who knew? But yes, we had to change that to Profitable Pricing. So I'd recommend very much so is pick up those books, but don't pick them up with they're on my reading list. Pick them up with an intention to do something. The difference between the bookkeepers that you see that are really, really making something of it is they're doing something. It's not they're cleverer, it's not they're brighter. They've just got on and decided to turn their intentions into action. That's the difference.
You absolutely are right there. And one of my words that I wrote down was impact. Make an impact. What is the impact? And the impact bookkeepers are making, the ones that are taking that action and taking going from inspiration or insight into action, is they're making an impact for their customers. And that's the most important piece. So I hope this episode, and I'm fired up because 2020 is going to be all about impact, and I can't wait to see the impact that you, listener, are having on your clients and helping them be better businesses, helping them make more money, helping them have more peace of mind and clarity in their business. And that's going to make me feel good knowing that you're all helping small business out there be successful. And Heather, thank you so much for helping our listeners do the same in their business today.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd really love to come back sometime in the year because we're starting to go deep into mental toughness and knowing what bookkeepers have to do and how they need to do it. I think it would be a great topic for a future podcast. I
agree. Let's have you back, talk about mental toughness. Let's make that our next episode. So thank you, Heather. We'll look forward to that next one.
A pleasure.
Beautiful. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.